The Hog's Die is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsdie.com.
It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstye Network, a show where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports, industrial, media, business complex. I'm joined as always by, I don't know, what offensive thing can I introduce them at this week? I'll introduce my co-hosts. How you doing today, guys?
How dare you call me a co-host?
I'm so disappointed you didn't try to subtly insult us.
I know, I'm off my game.
I'm doing better than you're
early.
doing. You sound terrible, Chris. I love you. You're a wonderful person. You sound awful. I feel like if I wasn't in a different state from you, I would potentially catch whatever you have through the internet.
It's weird because I feel absolutely fine. I'm just we're recording this a little on the early side, but not even that different from normal shows. I guess I'm just a little extra phlegmy.
Yeah, you give it 2 days, you're going to be miserable in 2 days, I guarantee you.
No.
And this is the earliest we've ever recorded, though, I think.
Maybe so.
I think this is the earliest show we've
It's
ever done.
8:27 a.m. Eastern time as we record this, and this is a time of day that Chris does not normally see.
That's right. I'm not a creature of the early morning. Maybe I'd be on my game if this was 1 a.m.
I've been up for 4 hours.
I actually just barely was saved from going out, so last night. So it could have been much worse. That's just I'll just put that out there.
Well, I'm in the Hogsty's Nashville studios today, so I'm in Central Time. So we are I'm an hour earlier than those guys as normal. So it is a bit early for me.
Steve is there. Are you there for a bachelorette party?
No, that would be negative.
But it is the bachelorette party capital of America at this point, I think. Nashville.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Nashville is the bachelorette party capital. There were some bunch of cool stories, when the NFL draft was here a couple of months ago about these bachelorette parties that showed up not knowing that the NFL and several hundred thousand people were going to be here.
Right.
That really messed up their bachelorette party experience.
Some maid of honor was shamed that weekend.
Some or maybe many.
But it didn't turn into anybody suing Rodger Goodell, which we might get into later on in this particular episode.
Then it truly was a wasted weekend. All right, so hopefully my tones will improve as the level of phlegm equalizes itself in my vocal cords, and John is false in his prediction that I will be knocked out with the flu by Tuesday. The battery of daily supplements I take hopefully are doing their job to stave that away. All legal supplements, by the way. All right, so let's jump into it. We've got...
As far as we know.
Yeah, that's right, as far as I'll admit.
Okay, can we real quick before you jump into the story? I want to make a real quick announcement to everybody. Yeah, no worries. The Hogstye Network has joined forces with Big Heads Media Network. And so all of our shows are now going to be available on bigheadsmedia.com.
Bigheadsmedia.com.
Yes. It's the Hogstye show is there now. I think this show, It's Just Business show, will be there too. But more to come on that later. But they are a great network that has a whole bunch of podcasts on any topic you could possibly dream up or possibly want to listen to. They have it there. So please go there and check them out. And more to come, but check them out for now, and we will talk more about that on a later show.
A whole bunch of podcasts at bigheadsmedia.com.
I think John's auditioning.
and there's the voice.
So if you're listening to us through a Big Heads Media connection, or that's your entree into the show, welcome. That means you're probably a new listener, I would guess. So hopefully you enjoy it and return to Big Heads to listen to this show and other shows. Every time I hear Big Heads, I think of a giant Clinton Portis poster on somebody's wall, Or I think of the character from the show Silicon Valley, so I'm going to have to get over that.
Fatheads, wasn't it? The
Fatheads, that's right.
Fatheads,
yes.
Yeah, I think of Steve.
What are you trying to say? I have a big head?
No, you just sit very close to your camera.
Well, it's because of the microphone. You see,
Yeah,
I'm trying to get good
always
sound
excuses
out
in
of the
Nashville,
microphone.
isn't it?
Yeah, he's
Hey, it's not. I'm just saying, as the one who mixes and produces the show, it's never my track that's messed up.
I have
people.
no
Just
sympathy.
understand that.
he wants to get a good vocal quality so that, John, you don't shame him.
You almost definitely will probably hear my dog, my daughter, or my neighbor's lawnmower today. So I just, on behalf of all of those entities, hello, listeners.
Well, I have closed the window, so hopefully we won't get as much of the LaGuardia JFK flight path as some previous shows.
Yeah, we really got bad last time. We had like 4 or 5 airplanes.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were buzzing your house.
Yeah, that's my daily existence. All right, so now we're going to get into the sports because I'm sure we're on the path to boring you, including our new big head listeners. Of course, we are just officially in NFL preseason. We've had a round of preseason games. The first episode of Hard Knocks has aired on HBO, so there's no denying that the preseason is in full swing. So we have an NFL-heavy podcast, which I imagine might be a little bit of a dominating theme as the NFL steps up and takes its crown and throne at the top of the sports food chain during its season, if it isn't for 12 months, but at least now it's official. And we've got kind of a number of wacky NFL stories, and we have to start with this Antonio Brown helmet situation, which we're recording this on Saturday morning. It'll be up on, Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm sure the story will still be going by then, but we had sort of already had a slate of stories to talk about when this one popped up into our brains late Friday afternoon, because that's when kind of things were really blowing up. And this is just a bizarre story. So everyone knows Antonio Brown is, a bit of a, he's an odd guy. And, he forced his way.
He's a knucklehead.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley would immediately call him a knucklehead if he were here, which this week we don't have Charles Barkley.
No, he had to decline. So he is, so he's strange. He has a history. He kind of weirded himself out of Pittsburgh, et cetera, et cetera. He finds himself with the Raiders this season. They invested a lot in him. It already started weird with Antonio because he's not currently, the first reason he wasn't practicing was because he overfroze his feet in a cryogenic chamber because he didn't wear the proper skin protection. And actually, I've seen some rumors that said he just went in barefoot. It wasn't even about wearing the wrong or whatever. He just didn't wear anything. So he actually has frostbitten feet.
And medically, I think it's more than frostbite. It's not just frostbite. It's what happened to him is a more advanced problem than just common frostbite, believe it or not.
He has a medical condition known as popsicle toe, which is common to NFL players who play in the northern divisions.
So
God.
This will be if that's an injury grievance we have not yet heard of, and I have to mention he was in France in July when he, I guess, went into the chamber, or his feet went into the chamber, and I just think it's just to add some irony. All of Europe, and especially France, was going through an intense heat wave. We're talking 110, 112, 108 degree days. So he literally got whatever advanced frostbite on the hottest, what's going to end up being the hottest day in France of the year. So figure out how that happens.
I was in Europe in July. I was at a wedding in England, an outdoor wedding. As a groomsman, I had to wear a 3-piece full suit with all the vest and everything, and it was outdoor, and it was like 1,000 degrees. And England has never seen this kind of heat, so nobody even knew how to prepare for this by having like punch or anything outside. Nothing. Everybody just sat out there and melted for ages. It was the worst. So if I was Antonio Brown and I was in France at the time, which is south of England, and therefore even hotter, I probably would have gone
Jumped
barefoot
in the crowd
into some scientific.
Well, the funny
capsule.
thing, this isn't even the story.
Yeah,
this is just a preamble.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. Keep going, Chris.
So things are already weird with Antonio. And people were tracking the level of frostbite and if he's going to play. And on Hard Knocks, he was trying and he had been medically cleared. So that was already getting confusing and possibly controversial. Well, Friday it popped up that he had actually sat in the NFL league office for a 2-hour grievance hearing and actually had not been reporting to Raiders practice at all. Because even with his frozen feet, he was, in the building and riding the bike and whatever. So he, I guess, hasn't been even showing up at Raiders practice for, I think, now 3 or 4 days. It came out, and he had a 2-hour grievance hearing with the NFL, and what it turns out is he is upset and actually refusing to play if he is not allowed to wear his preferred helmet. The league has moved on to safer helmets. I don't think we have to go too deeply into why, but the NFL is deeply invested in getting better helmets with concussions, both for players' health and for their own liabilities. Your mileage may vary on what you think is more important there. And so they had been phasing out old helmets, introducing new helmets, etc., etc. Well, Antonio Brown is married to his helmet. He's not going to report to work because of it. Funny little side piece here is the helmet the Shoot Air something or other, was a model that this company Shoot actually discontinued in 2014, naming at the time that it was insignificant in its safety and that the industry, basically the helmet industry, had moved on to a different kind of foaming inside, and that the foam that they used in that helmet was just not the best.
That brings up a question for me, which is sort of a mechanical question in nature. So Antonio Brown played for years using this discontinued Shoot helmet in Pittsburgh. He's now with the Raiders. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And they don't make this helmet anymore. And so what I understand is that what he wants to do is paint his Steelers helmet and put a Raiders sticker on it.
Yes.
And play NFL games.
Not wants to do. He's already done it.
He's already done it. So, but he legitimately feels that it's his right, his God-given right as an NFL player, to paint his old team's helmet, the color of his new team, and put a decal on it to make it look like it's a real helmet, and then go wear that into NFL games for the rest of his career. And then when he gets traded to the Cardinals, he'll paint it like a Cardinals helmet.
Yes.
Now, first of all, I think Joseph Heller would be proud because it's the ultimate catch-22 here in that, Antonio Brown is a lunatic, and it's quite possible he is a lunatic because he's used this old helmet that is insufficient with regard to safety, and that's probably caused his lunacy. And now that he is a lunatic, he wants to keep the helmet that made him a lunatic in the first place. But let me put the business spin on this. Okay, so, number one, Antonio Brown has a 3-year, $50 million contract, $30 million guaranteed. The Raiders, for their part, are suffering a $15 million cap hit in 2019, $30 million dead cap hit, over $30 million in dead cap. Now, what they have threatened here with all this nonsense is to essentially give him the required notice that's going to allow them to place him on the failure to report list. This is the Trent Williams list for those of you who are Redskins fans listening out there. Yeah, the 5-day letter is basically a default notice letter. In essence, it says, "Hey, listen, dummy, if you don't show up, we're going to put you on the failure to report list, which means we don't have to pay you." Again, this is what the list Trent Williams is on. All of this is because it's not because of the feet, it's because of the helmet. The feet is an injury in and of itself, and that will probably get him put on the non-football injury related list. But what we've read, I think, Chris, you read it, that the Raiders are actually contemplating just cutting bait with this dude right now because he's an absolute lunatic. If they do that, and they just outright cut him, they're going to have $30 million in dead cap put on their cap, which means that they would lose a net of $15 million in cap space this year. Quite bad. Or split that up into 2 years, you'd lose 8 this year and 7.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But this is the thing. This is the kind of things that happen when you do stupid things, NFL players. If you want to protest your helmet, despite the clear and obvious rule, and Tom Brady is in the same boat. He's using the same old helmet, and Tom has not caused a problem. Tom is just going to switch his helmet like a smart person. But what's going to happen is you're going to get put on the failure to report list, and you're going to start losing money and getting fined.
They showed Antonio Brown footage of Aaron Rodgers wearing the new helmet, even though he also used the old helmet and did not want to swim, but he now has. But I think that we're missing the bigger picture here, which is that there's the possibility that Antonio Brown's doing this on purpose because he does not want to play for the Raiders, having gone over there and then discovered that this is not a team he wants to be with. And I think that we actually have scientific evidence of this. The problem is that Antonio Brown has cold feet.
Insert rim shot here.
You're welcome, everybody.
Wow, that was a
gift to you, our
it was a
listening
long way to
audience.
go
yes,
for
that was a long way.
Oh, I can't. I'm done here. I'm not going to get better than that.
I was like, oh, no, he chose to play for them. No, so, and Steve, maybe you can help me understand this, because the 5-day letter, at least from what I'm looking at, says that the 5-day letter, this would give if they put him on they would put him on at the end of the 5 days, I guess, the reserved left squad list, which would shut him down for the season and shut off any obligation for the Raiders to pay him. Now, does that mean they don't have to, literally pay him, but they still take the cap hit? I'm a little bit confused a bit. Like if that would be an end game, right? Because that would actually mean he couldn't play this season. If they went through with that, that would put him on ice for the year. But does that mean they still have to take the cap hit if they go that route, even if they don't write the checks?
No. For these guys, like, and Trent isn't on in that category yet. Trent's just in the failure to report list, just for the record. So you're right. I screwed that up earlier. But no, you don't. If you get on this list, no, you don't end up having to pay the guy. And I think they're going to get out of the cap hit if that's the case. Believe it or not. And so, so the 5-day letter. Our buddy Mike Florio, who is just my favorite person in the world, as I've said many times, he's an idiot. But the article we're looking at here is Pro Football Talk, dated August 9th. Will Raiders send Antonio Brown the dreaded 5-day letter? And what he says about it, except I just lost my place. Okay, so the idea here is getting him on the active left squad list. Okay, and the 5-day letter, like I said, is basically a default letter. That says, listen, you're not obeying your, you're not living up to your contractual obligations, and so after 5 days, if he doesn't report, then he's going to get put on this list, and that means that his guarantees are going to go away. More importantly, okay, because this is a default breach of contract, and so anytime you have breaches of contract, your guarantees go away. So that's what this is really all about. Notice in Florio says he'd lose $14.625 million in fully guaranteed salary for 2020. The guarantees are going to void. And so, it is a way for the Raiders to just get out of it. If they flat out cut him, like I said before, they're going to lose the $30 million in cap space. If they pull this maneuver, they could theoretically get out of the guarantee at least, which would make it more palatable, and then they could cut him later. So it's a good maneuver in terms of that. The list that Trent's on is the failure to report list. So he's not on the left squad list. He's on the failure to report list. So forgive me, I'll backtrack on that.
But I mean, it just means like you could make a case. That is a bit of a. Now they lose the player, obviously, but if he's already this much of a headache, and like we said, we're on to issue 2. That seems like a pretty good golden ticket out of this for the Raiders.
Yeah, no, it does. Of course, Antonio would have to be a bigger idiot than we think he is to let this happen. It's all on him. All he has to do is show up and put on a new helmet. I mean, that's all he has to do.
Put on a new helmet. Oh my God, my levels are bananas.
All he has. That's all he has to do to keep this from happening to him is just say, you know what? my obligations to the team. I have a contract. The contract says I have to use NFL-approved equipment. End story. Of course, this is Antonio Brown, and he's a narcissistic nut job, and so you never know what he's going to do.
Yeah, he would be out because he'd lose out on the 14.6 and change contract, probably lose out on his second-year contract, which guarantee is 14.5, and he'd have to repay $1 million in bonus. Bonus has already been paid out to him, so he'd be walking away from give or take $15 million.
Yeah, because Antonio's contract is a little different. His was 3 years, $50 million. Only had $1 million signing bonus, but had $30 million guaranteed. And so what that's doing, it's guaranteeing his base salary for 2019, 2020. So it's not. He wouldn't have to pay back a huge signing bonus. He would just lose the guarantees for what he has. So that's not the same. That kind of contract is not what most superstars have. Most superstar NFL players have big signing bonuses up front, and that's not what he has.
Well, it's kind of the Kirk Cousins innovation, basically.
A little bit. I mean, Kirk had 100% guarantee. That was the innovation with Kirk's contract, and Antonio does not have that. He's got 2 of 3 years guaranteed, basically.
So we'll see. If you're a fan of HBO's Hard Knocks, he was already kind of wacky. He was riding hot air balloons and dealing with his feet, although they hadn't admitted yet about the frozen feet nature. But I imagine this is going to continue for a couple days, and Hard Knocks releases on Tuesday nights. I can imagine that this is going to be the main narrative of this week's Hard Knocks.
I mean, you know what? I mean, this is just me, not really a business issue, but I have absolutely no sympathy for this guy whatsoever. I mean, I hope all of you out there think he's a moron too, because I mean, the guy has got $30 million guaranteed, and you're going to go to the well over an old helmet
to wear a less safe helmet.
Yeah, it's not even that you're standing up for your own safety here, because the helmet is scientifically less safe.
The company admits it is a bad helmet for today's football.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to go to the mat over?
Yeah.
I mean, I have no sympathy for him whatsoever.
My
maybe literally die on,
Well, and he well could. My big question about this, we talked about this a little bit last night, but the NHL, I remember when I was young, the NHL made helmets mandatory in the game because of head injuries and safety issues and stuff like that. But the way that they implemented that was they decided one day, you know what, we need helmets in this sport. Hockey is dangerous. People get hurt. So they said, okay, everybody who starts playing after today is going to have to wear a helmet. If you are already playing and you don't want to wear a helmet, it's your head. Do what you want with it. And this went on for a number of years until finally one Craig McTavish, who was playing for the St. Louis Blues at the end of his career, but I remember him because he was Washington Capital, was the last guy skating around with no helmet on because everybody else had either decided to adopt the helmet or had already left the league or had died or whatever happened if he didn't have a helmet. So he was grandfathered in because he'd already been playing. So what I don't know is, so the NFL clearly chose not to do that. They said, no, you have to move to this new style of helmet, which the only thing that I can understand from Antonio Brown's perspective is he's an athlete. He's been playing using certain kind of equipment for his whole career. He's, what is he, 8-9 years in the league? And it's hard to ask a guy who's, his body and his being in tune with his body and what's going on with it and his vision and so forth that's all tied to his livelihood and what he's doing. I can understand him not wanting to change his helmet, right? I'm comfortable with this equipment. This is the equipment I would like to continue playing with. I disagree with his decision to make it, to take it to the level that he's taken it. I think that's just foolish. But I get at the beginning why he might feel that he doesn't want to make the change. What I don't really understand is why the NFL, if the NHL was allowed to get away with saying you don't need to have a helmet at all if you don't want, why is the NFL not able to or chose not to say, hey, if you preferred the old style equipment, why
John,
wouldn't you be allowed to do that?
They don't have to.
No, they don't have to. But why wouldn't they do it?
They don't, because why? Well, why would they? What advantage does that give them? I mean, what you'd have to do, I think, is you'd have to get Antonio Brown to sign a release and indemnity, that says, if you're not going to wear the approved helmet, the one that's the safe helmet that we've approved, you're going to release the NFL from all future claims related to injuries. You're going to give up all your rights to claim at a later date that you have head trauma that's caused by the game of football, and you're going to indemnify us for those claims. That's what I would do.
And maybe he'd sign that. I don't know.
But the answer is they don't have to, and they don't want to start something. The NFL is in all sorts of trouble with regard to head trauma already, and what they don't want is to have some knucklehead, to use your term, out there setting a precedent.
I borrowed Charles Barkley's terms. Charles and I have that kind of relationship. He uses my words all the time, but he won't admit to it if you ask him.
But I don't think the NFL wants to set a precedent wherein they're going to start having other knuckleheads come to them and saying, we want to use this equipment and that equipment. You want to set a bright line in the sand and say, listen, for the safety of everybody, you're going to do what we want or you're not going to play.
Sure.
I think that's what
the alternative now is that they've got, knuckleheads like us talking about stories like this. And guys like Antonio Brown, who, crazy as he might be, is a good draw for the league, who may not be playing because he's decided that this is too, for some reason, a bridge too far for him, which is a ridiculous decision, granted. The
league can do without Antonio Brown.
That the NFL did have other options. You may say, and I don't disagree with you, well, they're not going to. And sure, they already haven't. But they coulda, is all I'm saying.
Well, but it's setting a precedent that you don't want to set. Okay, the NFL as a entity does not want to give players the option to be less safe because they're already involved in a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit, with regarding player safety. And the last thing they want to do is set a precedent to allow some idiot like Antonio Brown to make himself less safe, even if you could make him sign a release and indemnity. That's not what in the best interest of the
But they're not making
National
less
Football
safe. They're making him just as safe as he's been for the last 8 or 9 years.
No, well, but that helmet apparently is proven to be unsafe or at least less safe, and they've moved on, and there's no reason to kowtow to this demand. It's a ridiculous demand. It's absurd, and it's not in anybody's best interest to allow an exception to him to do this.
But if they had taken the NFL or the NHL's approach from the outset, it wouldn't be a response to a demand. It would be the decision that they'd given the players in the first place.
With all due respect to the NHL, we're talking about many billions of dollars versus back then a league that was struggling and barely there.
That's true.
It's a completely different story, and the NHL was not being sued by hundreds of former retired players for player safety issues, and they don't have a $1 billion settlement hanging around out there.
It's the same question, just with a lot more money.
It's not the same question because, again, there was no legal action pending against the NHL as there is with the NFL.
And
I think it's close.
And in terms of his livelihood, all he's got to do, as Steve said a few minutes ago, is show up and play. If it hampers his ability, if the new helmet turns him into a mediocre player, he still collects almost $30 million, right? So for the next 2 years with his guaranteed contract, even if he's a 40 catches, 3 touchdown guy, he still gets paid that money. So it's not going to affect his livelihood.
He should absolutely wear the damn helmet and go play football. There's no question about that. I'm just saying, I understand if I was a race car driver and somebody told me that I had to wear a different kind of gloves or whatever, I could see having an issue with that. None of us, to my knowledge, are professional wide receivers. But so how the helmet is shaped, whether it impacts his ability to see the ball coming over his shoulder, whether it feels uncomfortable on us, so whatever it is, he's got the right to not like it. But we all agree that he should find a way to get over that and go play football if he still has feet.
For those of you who are new to the show, thanks to our Big Heads Media inclusion here, this is the classic the classic dispute that John and I have had on the show from the beginning. Okay, John is God
boy.
bless him. We love John.
Here we go.
Is
Come on, Steve.
and it's a. You want me to be blunt? He's a pro worker, anti corporation stance as a general. Is that fair?
I am guilty of supporting workers.
Right.
I agree.
And so I am typically a pro system guy.
Oh, yes.
I'm really let's help the system, and if we have to stomp on a few people along the way, I'm generally okay
to
with
hell
it.
with workers.
And so that's what
I agree.
This is the argument we're having right now. So to me, why on earth would the NFL ever grant this guy an exception that gives him no benefit whatsoever? And if Antonio Brown wants to leave, the NFL will be just fine, and they'll move on. So there's no reason to help this guy out. Whereas John is taking the alternate perspective, and if you're new to the show, you will hear this same argument repeated over and over again on many different topics.
Another part of our pattern is that Steve will consistently misrepresent what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the NFL needs to kowtow to Antonio Brown. I'm not saying they need to give in to his demands. I'm saying they could have taken a different approach from the outset, and they didn't. That's all I'm saying. And you're saying they didn't have to, and you're not wrong, and they didn't have to.
And I could be married to Cindy Crawford right now, too, but I'm not.
I don't think that you could be. I'm the one who can see you right now.
That's true. Fair
I think
enough.
that was Steve's point. Could and will are two different things. So,
Yeah.
all right. So this, we probably will have more opportunities to talk about this. It's going to continue the story. I wouldn't be surprised if it's still relevant 2 weeks from now when we record again. So we will move off Antonio's, head and feet, his north and south poles, for the time being, and move on to a different NFL story, which is not any less wacky. And that is the continuing, I guess it's a fan lawsuit, right, against the league around the results of the New Orleans Saints fans, based on the results of the NFC Championship game and what they feel, I guess, is a fraud, or I'm not sure what the letter of the law thing of the suit is, but there's been some new updates on the NFL basically trying to play defense and not even allowing this suit to proceed. So, Steve, where are we here?
Okay, so this does stem back to the Super Bowl. A bunch of fans, led by a New Orleans-based attorney who's definitely trying to just build up a name for himself because he can't possibly believe he's going to win this lawsuit. They sued the NFL. In essence, claiming that the NFL was negligent in administering their rules and allowing the infamous missed pass interference call in the NFC Championship game to go on, and thereby cost the New Orleans Saints the pleasure of going to the Super Bowl, and then the fans the pleasure of watching it. Now, this is a ridiculous lawsuit, and it was always going to get flushed right out the door, right down the toilet bowl immediately. But what's happened here is now the plaintiffs are trying to get Rodger Goodell to give a deposition, okay? It's what the NFL has done is the NFL has filed an appeal with the Louisiana Supreme Court to get this case dismissed before Rodger Goodell has to do a deposition. And so, because the idea here is the NFL does not want Goodell to have to be subjected to answering questions under oath in particular over such an insane issue as this. Because just newsflash, there's no real lawsuit here. This is just a way to get attention. That's all this is. And so, and interestingly enough, there's two really interesting things about this lawsuit. Number one, the plaintiff's damages demand is only $75,000. The reason for that is that that's below the threshold you could kick it up into federal court, okay? Because the federal court would not tolerate this stupidity for more than 5 seconds. It would be gone in an instant. And so they're trying to keep it out of federal court, to keep it in Louisiana court, because maybe you can find some judges that are sympathetic to the Saints' cause, and frankly, it'll get you more attention if it's in state court. So that's why the damages are $75,000. Now, the Saints have actually filed motions supporting the effort to get the case dismissed. So the Saints are not on board with this lawsuit either. There's something called the apex deposition doctrine, which means, and without boring you, Yeah, this is the kind of thing that happens when you listen to us, folks. You hear airplanes and stuff falling.
Sound like a bucket of some sort.
Yeah, see, if you guys were in the Hogsize Nashville studios, it would be completely quiet. So anyway, apex deposition, yeah. So the apex deposition doctrine says you can't just jump to the CEO immediately. You have to go through a series of steps, prove you need to actually get to the CEO, because otherwise you're basically just harassing him. And this entire lawsuit is just harassment. Again, it's just a way to get attention. So the NFL is now currently at the Louisiana Supreme Court trying to get the case dismissed before Rodger has to sit down and answer this insane lawsuit deposition questions. So that is what's going on with the Saints lawsuit right now. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is ridiculous. So I don't think that the Immaculate Reception turned into a lawsuit. I don't think that the Holy Roller turned into a lawsuit. Guys make bad calls. I can't believe him. Why are we even talking about? So here's the thing. Bad calls happen. It sucks. Now, if somebody actually has any kind of evidence or credible, even just circumstantial, I put two and two together, and I think that this guy paid that guy to make a bad call, and now you have a FBI-worthy investigation that needs to happen. Let's go find out if there's a payoff scheme somewhere where guys are throwing games and we have a shoeless Joe Jackson type situation or some nonsense like this. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is it was a bad call, and somebody is so angry about it that they decided they wanted to sue, and some lawyer said, "Hey, there's a way to get my name in the papers. I'll take it on." And then they'll do that, and then $75,000. Why? Because this way we can keep the story going longer. Because if it gets to the federal court, it's no longer a story 3 days from now.
Yeah, because understand this much, okay?
Yeah.
From a legal perspective, the fans have no standing to bring a lawsuit like this. This lawsuit was dead on arrival from day one. The fans do not have any standing whatsoever to claim an injury resulting from the broadcast of a football game. Okay, so there is from like the word go, the lawsuit was ridiculous. Before you even get to the allegations at heart, the lawsuit was absurd, and so the idea of deposing Rodger Goodell for something so stupid is not what anybody wants, and so that's why the NFL is trying to dismiss the lawsuit. If it doesn't get dismissed, I would assume, if it were me, I would file an apex deposition motion and say, you guys haven't proven you need to hear from Rodger Goodell on this.
And the big part, as a Redskins fan, I could just say, thank God the Redskins have been terrible. And the reason why I say this, and it'll be obvious after I connect the dots for you. If the Redskins had been in this game and there was a terrible call, and the Redskins then, their fans got together and tried to put together a lawsuit, the immediate thing that would happen is Dan Snyder would countersue his fans, and then somehow there'd be a judgment, and then we would all end up paying Dan Snyder money somehow. I know he would be all over that. Somebody sued me. I'm countersuing. There's defamation.
Well, that was breach of contract.
Yeah,
though,
but
so
he's a dick. I'm sorry. I know we'll never get on the Redskins network this way, but
not for calling him those names. We won't.
Like, he's terrible. At any rate,
this is the kind of lawsuit that makes lawyers look bad. This is a case of a lawyer who is clearly just trying to build a name up and become forever known as the guy who sued the NFL, so he never has to buy a drink in Louisiana again, and try to drum up other ridiculous lawsuits and blackmail companies out of settlement
and
money.
This is proof
That's what
that
this is
Steve
about.
and I are not always in opposition. Sometimes we agree.
There you go. Well, that's because it has to do about sleazebag lawyers, and so
neither of us like lawyers. Jeez.
I don't either. I don't like most of them myself.
Chris, do you have any kind of alternate thought on this? I mean, is there an alternate? Even if you don't, can you hypothetically just throw out a situation where you feel like this has got some kind of merit?
No, but
there is none.
But I would have loved. I mean, I would probably buy on pay-per-view a live stream of Rodger Goodell getting sitting for deposition. I don't care what the topic is. But I would love to see him. I would love to see him get get a bunch of questions thrown at him.
Deposed.
Oh, yeah, it would be Masterpiece Theater, for sure. Oh, I'd love to see it. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it's absurd. But, yeah, that would be great. But that's what you're talking about is precisely why they don't want it to happen. Because the transcript would get leaked by the first court reporter who gets the transcript. It would be out all over the place in 5 seconds, That's what would happen.
So acknowledging everything that you all said about the legitimacy, the seriousness, the yada yada of this lawsuit, I am rooting for that end result.
That just for your own.
Yeah, right. I have no dog in the fight.
Well, you guys who are listening to this can't see, but Chris has now got a bowl of popcorn.
Yeah, right. So
get your popcorn ready.
That would be highly entertaining. So I'm rooting for that. That is my rooting interest at this point.
Now, the thing about this is, for those of you who don't understand Louisiana jurisprudence, if there's any one state out there that would let this absurd lawsuit go forward, it's Louisiana. Okay? Louisiana does things from a legal perspective and contractual and everything else. Louisiana does their own thing, and they do it their way, and they don't so much care what the world thinks. And so if there's any one state that this could possibly go on, they picked the right state to do it in. Any other state court system would have flushed this long ago. But Louisiana, you always have to kind of wonder what you're going to find there. So it's not impossible to think that Chris's wish is going to come true.
So what you're telling us is that every movie we've seen that features some backstreet lawyer that just sort of sits up in his office, drinking whiskey, and then strolling out, and that's not how we practice law around here. That's actually the truth.
Oh,
in Louisiana?
Yeah. You don't want to just walk into Louisiana as like a out-of-state lawyer and expect to get anything done. That's not going to happen.
I love it.
So we can look forward to the motion picture version of the story with Matthew McConaughey as the local Louisiana lawyer.
Exactly.
Somehow.
All right.
We had to somehow get Field of Dreams in there. Kevin Costner, he's got to be involved.
He'll be Goodell.
We didn't bring this up as a story, but this week. But the MLB is having a preseason game. I think next year. I think. Don't quote me on hold me to the time frame, but they're going to play a legitimate baseball game on the Field of Dreams site.
Yes, I saw that.
Iowa.
I think the only more interesting place I'd like to watch baseball be played is if they put a field on the moon.
Well, here's what I want to know is if you're going to have the game played on the Field of Dreams site, is the game going to be blacked out locally to Iowa residents because they're not in attendance and the game isn't sold out?
I think they
neither Iowa resident is going to be in attendance.
That's true. Neither one. But we're off topic here.
My apologies to all of our listeners in Iowa.
I actually kind of excited for that. I have to admit.
I think it'd be cool.
All right, so we got another NFL. So yeah, this is wacky. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to talk about it, and there'll be more opportunities to depose Rodger Goodell. Next and last NFL topic is a little bit more serious. Another story that we hit on. I think both of you named it as your prediction for stories of 2019 when we did around the turn of the year in terms of the continuing integration of gambling and into professional sports. And we had another little beta test, as we'll call it, with the Washington Redskins Cleveland Browns game, where NBC Sports Washington did an alternative broadcast version that was actually you were able to play gambling-like games during the broadcast. I imagine using an app or using maybe even the remote control. Steve, you may know more about that, but they tested out what in-game gaming would look like. They used prizes rather than cash rewards, but it's obviously not a big leap from tchotchkes to cold hard cash.
Yeah, so this was first of all done on NBC Sports Washington Plus, which, like Chris said, is the alternative broadcast. And so the idea here was that you play predictive games. There's a data overlay on the screen. All this, real-time data going, which is what we talked about on the show earlier. The now defunct AAF, kind of started this and has all this technology, to get data going on a real-time basis. And so that was what the NFL was trying to do with this beta test of this system at the Redskins-Browns game. And it's going to go on for the other Redskins preseason games, by the way. They're not done with the test. But there was no betting, because, again, it was just a test. So what you were allowed to do in these games is just make predictions, and then the winners got money. There were $1,000 prizes of $1,000. This is clearly just an ops check. And so once the legal and contractual situation gets straightened out, I think this is absolutely the future. It sort of disgusts me a little bit on a personal basis, but from a business perspective, this is the future. So I think it's not a far stretch of the imagination to say in a couple years, couple seasons, certainly after the next media contract gets signed up, to say that you're going to be able to watch every game like this on some alternative channel, and then bet based, on various in-game things based on the data overlay that is going through the game at all times. This is the future, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're in Washington, D.C., check this out to see what you think. Because this is the NFL encouraging you to become a degenerate gambler in order for the league to make money. And this is their way to test to see if the technology works before there's real money involved. That's what's going on here.
So, Chris mentioned, I think we all predicted that this was going to happen. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the online video game business for over 25 years. I got my start working on Grandstand Fantasy Sports at America Online back in the mid-90s, 94, I think I started. And we were working with a small unknown company called Stats Inc. That was run by a married couple, John and Sue, and they had paid a couple kids to go out there and sit at football games and baseball games and actually report back the statistics to people as they happened. So they were, and then these got put into a database by somebody. And the kids got, a free ticket to the game plus $10 for their time to do this. And this is how these statistics got, initially put into computer systems from sports games. So from there, we developed, I think in 1995, the first live fantasy draft tool. So, and the reason I bring all of this up is because it's only been 25 years. We have rocketed forward from a technological standpoint in terms of what is capable and not capable. You'll see the things sometimes where people are running down the field, and there'll be data on top of that player showing his miles per hour that he's running, how far he has run over the course of the game, including sideways, not just in terms of front and back yardage, but how far has each person gone. They're going to be able to get to, what is the force of impact that one person has upon another person as it collides. So that the kind of data that has been available is changing rapidly. And I think we're really only seeing the very beginnings of how is this data and this technology going to be used to be monetized. Because all of this information turns into money, and so we're still scraping the surface of how that's going to be done. But it's interesting to see it happen.
Yeah, and how it's going to work with the Redskins preseason games, by the way, because Chris, you mentioned it, and I just forgot to address it. What you do is you go to a particular website and you log in and register, and then when the questions come up on the screen during the game based on the data, then you go to the website and you enter the answer. That's how this works for this going forward. But again, it's not, it's a pretty small bar to hurdle over to pay this much to make this bet from this website based on the data presented. That's the future. That's what we're testing here. From just a game perspective, I don't personally like it. It's just gambling on sports isn't really my thing, and encouraging the public at large to become degenerate gamblers doesn't seem like a smart idea. But this is the wave of the future. This is what the NFL is going to be. There's no way around it. Eventually all sports. This is going to be every sport. It's not, again, how about bet on the balls and strikes? The pitcher's up. The Clayton Kershaw is pitching. Is the next pitch going to be a curveball, and is it going to be a strike? I mean, you can see all sorts of applications for this concept once this technology really gets up and running.
Can't wait.
This is, and for our Big Heads Media new listeners,
BigHeadsMedia.com.
You just found the first instance of Chris's standard mindset, which is
I am Team Vice.
yeah, exactly.
Chris is the pro-degenerate voice.
Someone has to lead us.
Supporting the dregs of society everywhere.
The freedom to become a drag, I think, is probably the most accurate way to say
That's true,
it.
right.
Yeah.
In reality,
So this is interesting.
Well, maybe I'll put $1 on but I want the right goddamn.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there's too much money out there in terms of gambling. It's the legalization of marijuana argument, right? How much money is floating around that nobody's taxing, there's so much money that people need to find a way to get it. It's just too much moving around out there without any.
Yeah, and listen,
taking advantage.
we're making jokes about this, but this is actually a really important step we're taking here. This truly is the first foray the NFL has taken into this.
It's huge.
And this is a direct result of the last year's Supreme Court case about gambling. That essentially allows every state to pass pro-gambling laws if they want to. And this is the first step into that world. And so it's actually a really big deal that probably hasn't gotten the attention it deserves, except when you come to geniuses like us who we bring it up and point it out for you.
So here's I have a moral question now for Steve.
I think you know my moral answer.
Well,
probably,
but then it's also a political question. You don't like the government telling people what to do.
Correct.
You don't want people gambling.
How do you feel? No. Okay, hold on.
How do you feel about the government saying it's okay to gamble because that's less regulation, and yet, where are you on this?
I generally speaking don't like the federal government passing laws restricting freedoms within certain bounds. I mean, we've had this argument about drugs before, and that's a special case for me. I don't agree. I'm fine with the government protecting the public against drugs. But in terms of gambling, yeah, I mean, because Chris and I, as polar opposites we are politically, the one thing we have kind of in common is a thumb through your nose at the federal government sort of attitude about many things. So I'm fine from a legal perspective about the gambling laws, and I'm fine with the Supreme Court case that said, you know what, the federal government really doesn't have the right to restrict the ability of the states to promote or not promote gambling. And so from a legal perspective, this whole NFL foray into gambling is, I think, proper. It's okay. To me, from a moral perspective, I find it kind of sad. Mm-hmm. Because I don't, what it's really doing is it's promoting easy ways to bilk people out of a lot of money. It's what gambling on sports sort of ruins sports for me. I just want to enjoy watching the game for the sake of watching the game, and allowing people easy ways to deprive themselves of cash for this is a bit repugnant to me from a moral perspective. But from a legal perspective, I have no problem whatsoever with it. Is that a good way to answer it?
I'm with you 100%. It is part of the reason why I've stopped playing fantasy sports. To me, it takes away from my ability to enjoy watching football. And B, it's a lot of time that I don't have, but I also don't, I don't like gambling. I don't enjoy gambling.
I don't either.
But I think it should be legal if other people want to do it. I don't care what other people want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am with it, I guess, is from a legal perspective, it's the right thing to do. From a moral perspective, it's a bit repugnant. But I'm not a gambler either, I mean, I'm fine at the $5 blackjack table.
Yes.
Yes. And I gave up fantasy football too, but it was because I was too good at it. Basically, I got tired of winning every year.
That's why I stopped playing basketball. I won every year. I was just, other people didn't want to play with me anymore. It was too. Oh God, here comes Whirl. Let's all, no, we're too tired to play anymore.
Y'all think I'm kidding.
we'll have to get you into maybe some more. We need to get you in some more high end leagues.
See, then I'd basically be gambling. I have no desire to do that. That's the problem. That's the point.
Chris is going to front you the money. You won't be gambling. Chris will be gambling on you.
Oh, sure,
I'll spot
do
you
that,
with
absolutely.
a 5% vig.
Listen, I spent enough time for no pay already on the Hogstide Network. I don't need to spend more of it obsessing over
they're not
fantasy
paying
sports.
You? Chris, they're not paying him.
Oh wow. Well, I'll have to return my check.
Well, thanks, Steve.
All right, so we will. I mean, we are going to check in on the story many times. There's many versions of the story. We check in on versions of it all the time. I have to say, I was a little surprised that this was happening this quickly in this preseason game. Like, I mean, nothing about it broadly surprised me, but I did raise an eyebrow. Like, wow, they got that going, right away here in 2019's first preseason game.
It's too much money to pass up, man. I mean, the nanosecond the nanosecond that it's available, it doesn't surprise me, because also the players are going to be in favor of this, okay? Because from a broad picture perspective, it's just business perspective on it. The gambling money is going to be a part of the gross revenue that is going to be split between the owners and the players. And so the players, this is going to trickle down to the players also. So it's in everybody's best interest to get the public spending as much money as possible on football, because it's ultimately going to benefit everybody. So the NFLPA is going to find a way to claim that there's no moral problem with any of this. Believe, trust me. Well,
they'll make a case. It's no different than selling beer in the stadium. It's just low grade hedonism.
From a tactical perspective, you could spin this up in a week. This is no different than somebody saying, hey, let's put an overlay on The Voice saying, text your vote for who you think is best.
No, John,
to
it actually is different.
Wait.
What the technological part of it is, the technological part is to getting the real-time data from the field to the TV actually is a big leap. It's not vote for your favorite singer on The Voice.
But getting data onto the TV from the field, we've been doing that for ages. No,
advanced data with no lag at all. That's the trick. That's what the AAF's application they're working on was that.
Right. So that part is a different thing. But that technology exists, right? It was there in the AAF before. It was, we had data going to the TV from the hockey puck tail was that. But what we're talking about happening here is people are guessing what's going to happen in the play, which means that you have to come up with a series of questions, and then you have to go to a website and basically answer what I assume is a multiple choice question. I didn't get to play it, but spinning that up technologically by week one of the preseason isn't difficult.
No, I didn't mean from a technological perspective. I just meant that sort of rollout of like we're doing this, surprised me in the speed.
Gotcha. Just the decision making and being able to execute anything that quickly.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, the technological stumbling block with this has been getting real-time advanced data with no lag at all to everybody at the same time, because that's, from a gambling perspective, that was the problem, and that was what the AAF actually solved. And we talked about this on the show like a month ago. I think it was MGM, bought the rights to the AAF technology, and that was the innovation there, was real-time, no lag, everybody gets it at the same time, advanced data, player data. Yeah. That was a leap. Yeah. And that's going to be next with this.
Yeah, no, I get it. This is the way that we go to you for legal questions. This is my field of expertise. This is what I understand very, very well. So I understand. I know where the hurdles are from the data lag situation. This is what we deal with in games every day. But at any rate, I think we can all agree the technology, is opening doors for new kinds of ways for the league and other entities that sort of the leech
to part people with money
to figure out how to get other people's money out of their wallet. That's right.
Yay, capitalism! All right, so that's our very NFL specific stories. I'm sure training camps and coming league year and games being played, etc., will give us many more stories as we continue forward. For our final story today, another topic that finds its way into our show in a variety of ways almost every 2 weeks is broadcast television, how games are broadcast, how people consume games, how people pay for games, etc., etc. And we came across an article this week that said basically traditional broadcast television, which now includes cable, basically. It's not a distinction between I have cable, I don't have cable. When we talk about broadcast television, we're basically talking about cable TV. That live sports are what that model is clinging to in terms of its future. Because basically content distribution, where shows are produced, who's producing shows, how you consume them is just exploded. Doesn't mean there's less quote-unquote television. If we could debate what is even television, there's tons of content. There's tons of things that look like traditional television shows. They're just not broadcast necessarily in cable, or that's not the only place you get them. But if you want to turn on the ball game and of any kind, or race or whatever, you pretty much have to turn on broadcast television, at least right now where we sit in 2019. And that is what they are death gripping onto to save their model, which so really interesting. Is it the firewall? Is when once the streamers and the other kind of alternative distribution options figure out how to get live sporting events into people's veins, is that going to be the knockout blow for cable?
Possibly. The difference in today's world is that companies like Amazon, which is some of the streaming platforms you're talking about, not only do they want to get in the bidding, but they have the money to be able to afford to outbid Comcast, which is NBC, just off the top of my head, for NFL rights. But in years past, little online, platforms like that really weren't competitive from a financial perspective, and they are today. Amazon could outbid anybody for anything, basically. I'm being facetious, but
you're not wrong.
They have, I know, they really have the capital to outbid anybody for anything they want, and the technology's to the point. I'm a very traditional person. I like watching the games on TV. Everybody knows that about me. But truly, Amazon could step up if they wanted to and outbid everybody and get major broadcast rights and force everybody to go to Amazon Prime or whatever it is to watch these games. That could happen. And with Jeff Bezos being Jeff Bezos, that might happen. It really might happen. And so, yeah, I think the broadcast networks are holding on to this as a death grip. Their ratings, if you pay attention to TV ratings over the past several years, ratings are going down and down and down and down. The reason is there's so much alternative content. And, if those of you who have kids today out there who are teenagers, that they watch YouTube all day long. They don't watch much television. So yeah, the last vestiges of sort of the prior generation of entertainment probably is the traditional televised broadcast of a sporting event, and you get YouTube, Yahoo, and Amazon bidding on it in maybe not this contract, but the next television contract after that. You could truly see live sports not on TV.
I'm going to make my second throwback to the AOL days of the mid-90s. It's an interesting story. I was in a meeting back then with Ted Leonsis, who is now the owner of the Washington Wizards and Washington Capitals, very successful technology entrepreneur and a successful sports owner. And I remember the day that he stood up in front of everybody and said, you know what, our competition is no longer CompuServe. It's no longer Prodigy. Our competition is television. And AOL's goal back then was to take away more viewership time in the household than the television was getting. Now, AOL itself didn't succeed in this. They sort of spectacularly imploded, and it was a fascinating story for anybody who really loves Schadenfreude or misery in general. It was a great story for those people. But that idea that online content was going to supplant the television has never gone away. It's just shifted away from AOL over to other companies and has moved around throughout the years. And Amazon's in a fantastic position to be able to take up that mantle. And one of the things that you'll notice these days when you get an internet package, whether it's through Comcast or Xfinity or wherever you're going, I think those are the same thing. I don't know, but wherever you're going to get your internet, it is often now including it's a package deal with internet and cable. And I tried to get, when I moved here to Pennsylvania, I said, I don't even want cable. I just want the internet. So, what's the cheaper package that's just internet? There wasn't one. If I wanted to get a just internet package, it was actually more expensive because I had to get a faster internet connection and pay more for it. It was cheaper for me to get it with the cable, and and it was like $20 cheaper. And so I almost asked him, I said, can I just give you $20 and to not get the cable? Your cable is now worth negative $20. So can I somehow? No. So now I have all of the local channels on cable and maybe a couple of others, but I had to get the least expensive cable package. So I could watch. I think I'm in the Eagles market. I might be in the Ravens or Steelers market. I'm right triangulated there. But I still get my football games through, right now I'm watching through NFL Game Pass. I still, even though I have the ability to get a dish and to get, it's not worth it to me. So for the people who like local teams and are in the local market, broadcast television is probably still a good option for them. But I think that audience is dwindling, and I think that eventually the internet broadcast is going to have to take over.
There's a couple things going on at even at the very top levels I think are important here. Steve, talked about it a little bit with just the capital available to the big tech companies and the streamers. But if you're paying attention to the broader media landscape over the last 2 or 3 years, you've seen a lot of mergers, conglomerations, buying. And that's because the same 3 or 4 giant media companies that are filling content in traditional models, broadcast television now, are consolidating that so that they can own a bunch of those rights. So ultimately they're either going to own their own pipes about how they get stuff to people, or they're going to be wherever those pipes are. But as long as they own a diversified portfolio and content, they're good. So the best example of that right now, especially in a sports context, is Disney Plus, which is going to be their over-the-top streaming service. And Disney has been buying and already has and has been buying tons of content. Owns ESPN, so they've put an ESPN Live Sports bundle package with Disney Plus. So you're going to start, and you saw the Fox, 21st Century Fox going to AT&T, et cetera, et cetera. There's sometimes rumors even of Apple buying like even a Netflix, if you can imagine that. So you'll see that kind of so you get diversification in content portfolios at the very top of the corporate ladder so that they can offer this. The second thing is, I think for the end user, the viewer, it's not going to change that much ultimately, because things are going to still look, and I'm talking about the physical box, still look like a television, right? They're going to, they may be streamlined or whatever, but you're still, and they're just the smart TV. So you're still going to put something in your living room. It's just the way it's getting the content's going to be coming through your broadband, and it's going to be, right. So the sitting down on the couch and watching the box is actually not going to change. It's just how the signal gets there and how you subscribe to that. So ultimately, even someone like a Luddite like Steve is probably not going to have their lifestyle changed that much, because they know that the physical delivery mechanism is still where they're going. That's the move into smart TVs, et cetera, et cetera. So that they're going to replicate that experience even for your YouTubes, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next piece that I just find so funny is everything is so fractured, right? Like people have, if you're like me and you're just like need every television show, piece of media content. I mean, my bills are blooming. I can't even keep track of how many subscriptions I have, including the NFL DirecTV package via the computer. Everything. I have it all. I'm a team degenerate, team vice. So I can't wait. Can't wait for someone to come along and say, you know what, this is so crazy, you all want this content, there's so many different options, who can even make sense of it? What if I told you that there's a service that could bundle all of this and give you all the content and maybe let you pick and choose a little bit of what tiered package that you might want. And then for one price and one click on your smart TV, give you all that content.
That's called a cable company.
So, but we're gonna circle. This is the snake eating the tail. Where I'd predict 2 to 3 years from someone coming along and basically repackaging the concept, not the pipes, the concept of cable television right back at you, because it's hysterical.
And we need to wrap up here because we were out of time. But a big reason why I have cable television is exactly that reason, John. Or Chris, I don't want to have 18 different subscriptions to 18 different streaming services and this and that. It's just way too much hassle, and I don't want it. But at some point, if all the sports packages, to televise sports games are on different streaming services like that, you're gonna have to, or just not watch sports. Which is
I'll be happy when they give me an a la carte package that lets me choose which teams I want to follow, who I want to, But if they're gonna continue with the idea that I have to pay one astronomical sum to consume all of the content they have to offer, I'm not going to do it.
I think it's coming. I think the NFL is the last holdout on that anyway, and I think that we talked about the DirecTV deal, et cetera. I think it's crumbling. They know where it's coming. You'll 2-3 years from now, you'll be able to buy the Redskins package and get those games. I would bet a lot on it.
Also, I learned today that Steve's family doesn't actually huddle around the radio while Ma puts on the fire, which is how I envision.
Drink your Ovaltine.
Drink your Ovaltine.
Hey, Ovaltine's pretty good stuff, man.
Okay,
no argument.
With that,
we agree again, sir.
A massively on-brand Steve comment. We should probably wrap this up. We've gone a little long, a lot of good meaty topics. So, welcome to our Big Head listeners, and check out the Big Head Network. And you can find me at ChrisLarry33 and Just Business Pod, and we'll dust that off a little bit and getting excited for a packed fall sports season. How about you all?
Absolutely. I'm not on Twitter. You can find me more often than not manning the Hogsty Twitter, which is at the Hogsty.
John _ Whirl, I think.
But don't
Twitter.
bother because he's
he's officially engaged in the last 2 weeks.
I did. I answered a couple. It could happen.
He got excited by robots.
I don't remember what I answered about. I trust Chris.
All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of another It's Just Business show. Join us in 2 weeks. Check out all of the fantastic content on the Hogside Network, including the Hogsty, which Steve, when are you moving to 2 weeks? Or 2 episodes a week?
2 episodes a week. Will start week 1 of the NFL season.
All right, and of course, Rick Schneider's fabulous new edition. What's that one show called again, Steve?
Rick Snyder's show is called Seasons of Discontent.
All right, which I'm sure the upcoming Redskins season will give him plenty of material to talk about.
And that is the source of the discontent. Yes. That is the point.
What's he gonna do after they get rid of Allen, though?
Well, it's the Seasons of Discontent show.
Joy
actually,
and happiness.
No, the Seasons of Discontent show actually isn't just focused on the Redskins. He talks about all manner of Washington, D.C. sports.
That's good stuff.
Well, the Nationals are setting up to give some disappointment probably in early fall, I would imagine, at this point. So there'll be plenty to talk about. So we will talk about it then, as will these other talking heads. So we will sign off. Goodbye.